I am so fascinated with what Joker 2 was trying to do, so I'm gonna try to walk through my thoughts here. But this is also to say I don't really understand the immense negative reaction this movie is getting. Because to me, in a lot of ways, I think the movie does work. Not necessarily as something entertaining, though we'll get to that, but more as a well-told story that knows what it wants to say and does effectively say it. So I'm gonna walk through it a bit and go through some thoughts, and warning, full spoilers here. Arthur has a choice. We open 2 years after the events of the first movie, and like we saw last time, Arthur Fleck is now in prison, but there's something different about him. Whereas we ended the last film with him on this triumphant high, having become this powerful symbol of defiance, here again he's quiet, he's timid, he's frail, and it's to that Arthur that his lawyer explains what will be his best defense in court, to tell the judge and jury that Arthur Fleck is one person, this kind and traumatized victim, and that the Joker is someone else, a malevolent alternate personality that had taken him over and made him kill those people. And while Arthur doesn't immediately react to that way of explaining things, in my view, this is the movie presenting the character with two options. It's telling him that he can go back to being Arthur Fleck, that he can say this was all a mistake, a moment of helplessness where he wasn't in control, and he can be, in a way, innocent of it, or he can choose to embrace the Joker, decide it was him and always will be him, embrace the social movement that has grown in his image, and own all the horrible things he's done. But to these options, he's confused. Remember, Arthur, even in the first movie, admitted that he never intended to set off this whole social movement, and he doesn't really care about it. He just had some frustrations in his life that hit a boiling point, and that made him lash out. And so now that he's seeing the results of what he's done, he's just unsure what this means for him. And because he just doesn't know what to do, he's bottling up all those emotions, until he attends the prison's musical therapy class, where the therapist explains to him that music can be a doorway into his emotions, to work through whatever it is in his mind and maybe to heal. And so it is only logical that Arthur, who is at this point so emotionally troubled, leans into that lifeline. It is a musical, and Lady Gaga is here. Okay, look, I know a lot of people had issues with this movie being a musical for a lot of reasons, but bear with me because this creative choice does narratively make sense. It is a logical progression of Arthur's character to want to work through his trauma, and when music is put forward as a way to do that, it makes sense that he clings to that potential way to get help. Now, one critique I've heard of the music is that the singing is just bad, or that it doesn't lean into the sorts of joys of songs that musicals normally do. But I think we need to understand that this movie is using the trappings of a musical in a very unique way. It's just not interested in making fun song breaks because this movie does not want to glorify or embrace any sort of escapism, because that wouldn't support the story that it's trying to tell, the point that it's trying to make. And the singing is bad to support that same narrative, because Arthur's singing is not meant to be melodious, it's meant to be amateur, confused, and troubled. And it's much the same with Harley. I've also heard the complaint that the songs kind of stop the story in its place and prevent any narrative progression, but I also don't think that's true. Arthur's first song is him coming to terms with the fact that he can sing to work through his emotions. Other songs dive into and explain his love for and subsequent confusion around Harley, and each musical number is meaningfully cluing us into the world of the characters, which is one of the things a good musical will do. So this is all to say the songs maybe aren't on a surface level fun, but also I don't think they're supposed to be. And by not being fun in the way that they do it, it does end up holding more narrative weight. But now how they use Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn, or Lee as she likes to be called, is also so interesting. See, Arthur meets Harley in the prison music class and learns that after she saw the TV movie they made about Arthur's crimes, she fell madly in love with the Joker. And so Arthur falls for her too. But then the influence she ends up playing on him becomes crucial to the story. Because remember, Arthur is conflicted. He doesn't know if he is truly a misguided and traumatized victim, or this triumphant symbol of the masses named Joker. But what he does want, what he's wanted since the first movie, is love, is someone to care for him in a cruel and cold world. And so when Harley finally is someone who gives him that attention and affection, even if she does it in a weird way, a confusing way, by lying to him and saying nonsensical things like how they're gonna build a mountain together, he clings to it, he celebrates it, he'll do anything to keep it alive because that is all he's ever wanted. And so when Harley insists to him that his true self is not Arthur but the Joker, he says okay, and he embraces the Joker persona fully. He fires his lawyer, tosses away this dissociative identity defense, and defends himself in court in full costume as the chaotic Joker. So it seems like now, from the two choices Arthur was presented at the film's start, to be Arthur or to be the Joker, he has chosen. And he revels in the power of his choice, until he gets to his most pivotal day in court, the consequences revealed. So in court, they call in Gary Puddles as a witness, one of Arthur's former co-workers and really his only friend in the first movie. But remember, Arthur also killed another co-worker in front of him in that first movie. Now, many people, even people who hated Joker Folie, Deux, and quick side note, I know I'm saying it wrong, I don't know French, but yeah, even people who hated this movie have said that this moment is a standout scene, and it is. But I think it only works because it is the climax of everything the movie has been building up to so far. Because the only reason why what Gary says is so powerful is because it so effectively destroys the choice Arthur has just made by this point to embrace the Joker persona. Because see, to Arthur, the Joker persona, based on how Harley has encouraged him to take it on, is this strong hero of the people. And he now believes that that is his truest, most powerful form, someone he is at his most essential level. And so of course he wants to believe that that person, who he is someone he can live with. But then Gary reveals to Arthur that no, that Joker persona traumatized him. That seeing the Joker kill his coworker led to him running in fear, hiding in a police station, and led to him leading a broken and mentally scarred life these last 2 years. And worst of all, he tells Arthur to his face how in the past he was the only person who was nice to him. And so he explains how badly it hurt for him to come to terms with the fact that that very same Arthur, his friend, was the one to betray him, to destroy him so completely. And upon hearing this, Arthur is baffled. He drops some of the Joker persona, the gravitas, and he yells at Gary and he says, "No, I said I wasn't going to hurt you and I didn't. I was nice to you. The Joker is about helping people like you. What are you not seeing?" But to this, Gary just keeps crying and whimpering, and Arthur is devastated. So, what is the effect of this? Remember, the film begins with giving Arthur a choice. Admit he is the tortured Arthur Fleck who just made some mistakes, or embrace that he is the chaotic Joker and live in that symbol. And based on Harley's insistence, he chose to be Joker. He chose to believe that was the truth. But now, upon really seeing how cruel the Joker can be, the unintended consequences of that choice, he's confused again. Now, look, in my view, this Gary Puddles scene was enough to sell this point home. But the movie chooses to continue and beat this point over our heads a bit. So it gives Arthur even more consequences for the Joker when it has the prison guards assault him, and it also has the guard kill his little prison buddy. And yeah, this bit is probably overkill, but even the first movie was never subtle in beating Arthur down, so I think this just comes with what this universe is. But yes, the lesson lands for Arthur. He chose to become the Joker, but because of that, was faced with all the unintended consequences and pain that stem from that persona. And he realizes soberingly, he does not want this. And so, he shifts again. And the next day in court, he sits before the judge and jury, and he, deflated, bruised, and beat down, tells all of them he isn't the Joker. He tells them this other persona and all its supposed power, it's just a lie, and one that only brings further pain into this world. And then he admits that it wasn't Joker or any other persona that killed all the people he killed, it was him, and him alone. Joker doesn't exist. It was all just Arthur Fleck. And this is just such an incredible beat, because Arthur had the choice to be the innocent and misguided Arthur, or to be the powerful Joker. And he tried being Joker, but he saw the consequences. And so then he came back and chose a new option, a sort of middling one. He says, no, there is no Joker. He says, I am Arthur Fleck. But unlike what his lawyer wanted, he also doesn't claim Arthur Fleck is innocent. He says that not only was he misguided, but he was under no spell or alternate identity, that he is fully to blame for the people who died, and that he and he alone was in the wrong. And look, people have said there's no point to this movie because it leaves Arthur at the end exactly where he was in the last movie. But this is growth. This is Arthur coming to a level of maturity that he did not have at the end of the last movie or at the beginning of this one. This is new. This is him changing. This is him accepting the consequences. Folie à deux. Now, as you'll know, an explosion goes off in the court, and within that chaos, Arthur is able to escape. And so he runs off and finds Harley outside, sitting by the famous stairs in the first movie. So he, happy, tells her he's free, they can be together now, let's go. But here, she just glares up at him, and she says no. She says he isn't him anymore. And Arthur doesn't understand. He says, it's me, what are you talking about? And she tells him that she was in love with the Joker, in love with that symbol and all its power, and she wanted to live out that idea with him. But she just watched him in court admit that there is no Joker, and so that must mean there is nothing in reality between them. Look, people have been criticizing the name of this movie, saying the fancy French title doesn't make any sense. But this is where I think you're supposed to understand what it really means. I want you to remember how so much of what Harley did made no sense. She lied to Arthur about why she was in prison and talked her way out of trouble for that. She bought and lived in Arthur's old apartment despite him wanting nothing to do with that. And throughout the movie, she kept telling Arthur and the press that the two of them were going to build a mountain together, which doesn't mean anything. So why did she do any of this when none of it made sense? Well, it's because she was living a fantasy. She had chosen to accept a delusion that Arthur also briefly accepted as well. They shared the delusion, the fantasy, of the power of the symbol of the Joker, the idea that that person even exists. But as we come to now see, that idea was a fallacy they shared, a folie à deux. And it goes further. Because remember, Harley is a fan who fell in love with the Joker after seeing a movie about him, much like we, fans of the first movie, might have fallen in love with him after seeing that movie. So, in a way, Harley serves as a proxy in this story for the actual audience, meaning the shared delusion was not just between him and her, but also between him and us. The ending. Now, a quick note on the ending, very controversial, I know, but it's pretty simple. The point of this movie is to sell home the disastrous negative consequences of Arthur's putting the Joker persona out into the world, of him realizing that there is no good for him in that. And so he tries to be done with it, but unfortunately, by this point, it's already out of his hands. The symbol has grown into something bigger than something he can stop, which is what leads another inmate, someone who loved the Joker idea, to be deeply offended by Arthur's repudiation of it. And so, yes, he kills Arthur. And this tracks with the movie selling home that the idea of the Joker is dangerous, even to Arthur himself. And yes, there is a tease here suggesting that this other killer is the real Joker, but also, it's a nod to that idea, sure, but it's not confirming that. It's just there if we want it. But again, that's not really the point. The point is to show us and to show Arthur, even in his final moments, how disastrous, how big of a mistake the symbol of the Joker was. So is it a good movie or not? Art is subjective. But this all brings me back to wondering why the response to this movie was as harsh as it was. And I think there's a few different lenses through which people are making their evaluations. And to list them, I think, they're saying it's not a well-made movie. They're saying it lacks a meaningfully articulated point or thesis. Or maybe they see the point, but they just don't agree with what that point is or what it's trying to say. So to the first question, we can go into the technical of how well-made a movie it is. And firstly, it is a well-structured narrative. The script has all the beats of most successful blockbusters. It follows Save the Cat. It has the opening, the call to action, the fun and games, the climax, everything. That doesn't necessarily make it groundbreaking, no, but it means it's written arguably well. Then almost everyone agrees the acting is fantastic, everyone involved is doing great, and the cinematography is gorgeous. The editing, the costumes, the sets, the production, everything is firing on all cylinders from a technical perspective. So let's go to the next question. Does the movie then use that technical mastery to have a point, to say something meaningful? Or was it just a waste of time like some people are saying? But if you've watched this far into the video, you'll know that to me the point was very clear. This movie set out to challenge the film before it, to work as a reversal, and to put into question the things we might have thought were true. The first Joker ended with the character high and mighty triumphant, but this one urges us to take a step back and ask, is a mass murderer really someone to be celebrated? Is the guy really some kind of underground hero? Does he deserve to win? And the movie, boldly I think, says no. And look, that the Joker is a bad guy and that we should see him as a bad guy is not a new idea. Nearly every piece of Batman media that has included the Joker has had the central idea that the Joker is bad, he is misguided, he is a force to be thwarted. And in my view, the first movie actually does hint at this too. Yes, it's cool to see Arthur win at the end, but it should be clear that the mass murderer isn't someone we should emulate. Even so, that movie still had Joker win, so this one, again, goes full force into the reversal. That the Joker and everything he represented was wrong. And so the movie does have a point. It did have something it was trying to say, which leaves our final question. Do we like what it has to say? Do we agree with it? But this, I think, is irrelevant. I don't think this question should matter that much. Look, art is not meant to just make you happy, to entertain you, or to give you a few hours of diversion. Art often is meant to challenge you, to push your buttons, to maybe upset, or in whatever way elicit a powerful emotional reaction in you. So if this movie presented an idea that someone disagreed with, that they didn't expect, but it still moved them, unsettled them, and made them feel something, even if that something is a kind of hurt or discomfort, I think that makes it a successful piece of media. I respect the risk. Look, I loved the first movie, but we have to remember how weird it was. It spat in the face of comic canon and shocked us by presenting a pathetic, deeply troubled Joker that I don't think could have ever realistically fought any vigilante. And so a sequel was not only always going to continue playing loose with the Batman mythos, but it was always going to be weird and controversial. And if it had not shocked us, if it had given us truly whatever we expected, I don't think it would have been true to this franchise. And the Arthur we got in the sequel was wholly the same deeply troubled Arthur from the first movie. Now, where the movie might have failed, and I think why it's struggling commercially, is because people see it as not delivering on the promise of the premise. That is, the movie might have been billed and marketed as another chaotic Joker adventure with him causing a mess and falling deeper into his crimes and building his empire. And if you wanted that, yeah, this movie absolutely was not that. But go back and watch the trailers, because I don't think they were actually promising that. I think people just read that into it. The marketing very much just promises a deep, unnerving look into a conflicted man's psychology, which, remember, was also what the first movie promised, and this sequel did deliver on that. And in that way, as much as we might say this movie is not on paper fun or surface level fun, I enjoyed joining in for the kind of ride they made. This movie is painful. It's so different than anything that has ever come from the DC canon. It is hard to watch, it is disheartening, it is brutal. And art will always be subjective, so if you think it's a bad movie, if you didn't enjoy it, and you have reasons for why, people can discuss that with you. But no one can or should tell you that that's wrong. But for me, in my view, this movie set out to say something. And after all it made us go through, after all the trauma it made us relitigate, in the end, I think it did what it wanted to do very effectively. And I can't fault it for following through. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button below. And also, if you want to see more movie commentary and thoughts like this, hit that subscribe button. And there's a lot more to discuss here, so feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you next time.